Hi everyone, September is CMT Awareness Month, and this year I decided to go to Russia to raise awareness for CMT. Let me tell you more about that. As you probably know, right now I live in Japan and I've been living in Japan for 10 years. But occasionally I go back to Russia just to visit my family and friends. But this time I decided to make my trip back to Russia very special. I decided to meet my subscribers who all have CMT. And I met them twice. Once in Moscow and once in St. Petersburg. I call these meetups workshops because the participants were actively engaging in what we were doing. So let me walk you through what I was doing with my CMT subscribers. First of all, of course, I rented a yoga studio in both Moscow and St. Petersburg, but actually the venue was much better in St. Petersburg. It was more spacious. It was more comfortable, everything was working there, there was an administrator who was helping me with everything. In Moscow, I was by myself in the sense that the yoga studio doesn't have any administrator. The person who rented the studio to me just texted me a lot of information about how to enter the studio, which PIN codes to use and so on. But the studio itself is located in a very uncomfortable place. For people with CMT, you have to walk down the stairs, a few kind of flights of stairs, and the studio is not as big as I expected it to be. Also, the yoga mats were not very new at all. They were actually, some of them were torn. There were literally holes in some of the yoga mats. Plus, the light switches were not working very well. So all of those things made the workshop way worse than I expected. On the other hand, I had a helping hand. My sister was helping me, which made running the workshop much better. Before running these workshops, I didn't realize how much effort it is to organize such events. And I was really happy that my sister was helping me in Moscow. So the way I organized it was each workshop lasted for 2 hours. And first we were introducing ourselves. So in Moscow, 12 people came, and there were 2 men. There was one family, a mother and her teenage son, and the rest were women, which is interesting because I always feel like there are more women with CMT participating in everything. Among my subscribers, there are more women. In studies, if you read studies, there are more women participants. So this is interesting. It's not like CMT affects women more than men, it's not true, but it's just curious that women participate more often in such events and as well as in studies. We first made some introductions, and then I was leading a session of exercises. So in Moscow, we didn't have any chairs, so all the exercises we were doing was on the floor. And I tried to adjust the level of exercises so that everybody could do it. Of course, CMT is very heterogeneous, and I could see it among my participants as well. Some have a better physical fitness, less disease progression, and some more. Therefore, I had to adjust the exercises that we were doing to kind of everybody. So we exercised for roughly an hour, and then we were drinking matcha. I really love matcha. You might have seen some of my videos, maybe about Japanese teas, and matcha is my favorite Japanese tea because of its health benefits. But also I like the taste, and it is pretty high in caffeine, but it doesn't have this effects on me that coffee does, and I can talk about that in a separate video. But anyway, I decided to bring real matcha from Japan to Russia and to give a taste of matcha to all the participants. So I prepared matcha the way it is supposed to be prepared, with a chawan, meaning a special cup, and with a chasen, meaning a whisker that is used in Japan to prepare matcha. And then I shared it with everybody, all the participants. And I was surprised that actually, I think most people liked it, which was unexpected for me because matcha has an interesting kind of taste. Not everybody likes it, but yeah, among my participants, most people enjoyed it, I feel. And afterwards we still had some time to just talk, and the participants were asking me questions mostly. So we discussed things like supplements and CMT. Check out my videos on that subject. We discussed the development of therapies for CMT. We discussed surgeries, vaccination, all kinds of different topics we discussed. And that kind of wrapped up our session. My sister again helped me to clean everything up, and then we said goodbye to each other. And then in several days I went from Moscow to St. Petersburg, and then I ran a second workshop in St. Petersburg. In St. Petersburg fewer people came, 7, and there was one man, there was one family, again a mother and her teenage son, and the rest were women. And actually 2 participants traveled quite far. They came from Petrozavodsk, which is located in the Republic of Karelia, in the Karelia Republic, and it's quite a ride or a drive from that city to St. Petersburg. So I was very grateful to the people who came from that kind of far away to St. Petersburg. But also in Moscow I had a few people traveling who don't live in Moscow but came from other cities to see me, to share their experience. So that was really nice, and I was really happy about that. So in St. Petersburg the format was similar but quite different, in the sense that we also did exercises, but we were doing them standing and seated, mostly seated. We had chairs in that yoga studio, which we didn't have in Moscow. So I decided to do all the exercises seated, but I was also showing some standing version for people who could do some standing versions. Then again we had matcha, a tea ceremony, and then we again shared our stories, discussed CMT, surgeries. During both workouts, surgeries were a very big topic. And then we took a few pictures and again wrapped everything up and said goodbye to each other. But surprisingly, I had a helper this time as well. I had an assistant. So in Moscow it was my sister, but in St. Petersburg it was quite unexpected how I found this helper. In fact, a lady contacted me on Instagram. She sent me a message saying that she is an artist and she's writing a novel about a person with CMT. So she was asking me if I would be willing to talk to her, if I would be willing to have a call and discuss CMT, what it feels like, what challenges I face, and so on. She found my YouTube channel, and therefore she decided to contact me like that. But when I was in Russia, in St. Petersburg, I was like, that sounds like this person could be based in St. Petersburg. Of course, they're Russian, so I was like, okay, let me ask where they are from. And she said that yes, she is located in St. Petersburg right now, which was really amazing because she just sent me the message and I turned out to be exactly in the same city that she was at that time. So we met 2 days prior to the workshop and we talked a lot. We talked for more than 4 hours. And she's a very nice person. She's really interesting. She does art therapy, she does writing and painting and all kinds of creative things. So indeed, she's now writing a novel about a person with a rare disease, most likely with CMT, and she was trying to understand what it feels like to have a rare disease. So I invited her to the workshop and she came and she was very helpful for me, so that turned out to be very nice and helpful for me as well. So this is how the workshop went. I really enjoyed meeting my subscribers. I hope that people who came gained something. I hope that our exercises were good and suitable for everybody. I hope that I managed to give some hope, give some positive attitude and understanding that even if you have CMT, it's not the end of the world. There are many things we can do, and one of the things is exercising. Like the biggest, best thing that we can do is exercising, strengthening all kinds of muscles throughout our body. And this is literally can change your life if you have CMT. On this note, please check out my website, cmtsmart.com. I publish all kinds of workouts there, and if you subscribe, you can get access to all kinds of different workouts, strength, stretching, balance, cardio, everything. And you can try it for free for 7 days. So if you don't like it, just cancel the subscription and I will be okay with that. But please try it out and see if you like them. I try to create workouts that are CMT friendly. But again, within CMT, there are so many different people. But anyway, I hope that you will be able to find something that you can do, that you enjoy doing, and that can really strengthen your body. I'm a certified personal trainer. I have CMT. I know what it is like. So please check out my workouts. So I spent 3 weeks in Russia. I went to Moscow. I spent there almost a week. Then I went to St. Petersburg. I spent there another week. And then I went to my home city, which is Kostroma. I'm sure you've never heard of that if you're not from Russia. But it's a kind of small city. It takes 4 hours by train to get there from Moscow. So right after St. Petersburg, I went to my home city. But the tough part of the journey was that I got sick. In St. Petersburg, I got sick and I had to travel being sick. It's the season of colds, so cold, so I've caught some respiratory infection, I guess, and I had to recover for a few days. Luckily, it was not too bad, so I recovered relatively fast, and when I was flying back to Okinawa from Russia, I was already feeling pretty good, almost completely recovered. But because I got sick, I couldn't meet some of my other subscribers who are actually based in my home city. So even though it's a small city, still there are people with CMT living in that city. And I made some arrangements beforehand, but then I couldn't see those people, unfortunately. I did not want to do a workshop in Kostroma because it's too small. Maybe 1 or 2 people would come, but I did want to see those people. However, I couldn't. That was the disappointing part of my trip, but otherwise I'm really happy that in September this year, during the CMT Awareness Month, I managed to go to Russia and organize these workshops for people with CMT, where we exercised, we drank some matcha, bringing down our inflammation and oxidative stress, and then we shared our stories, our opinions. I shared my knowledge and experience as well. So it was really nice to do all those things. Plus, while I was in Moscow, I went to a gastroenterologist and I discussed at length with this doctor whether my gut issues can be related to CMT or not. I literally printed out the research papers that I found, I brought them, and the doctor was really good. She spent a lot of time with me. She spent an hour with me actually looking at all the results that I have from my different tests. And she looked at the papers and we discussed everything in depth. And yes, indeed, some of the symptoms or like a part of the symptoms that I'm experiencing might be related to CMT. So if you haven't seen my video on GI issues or gut issues and CMT, please check it out. So yeah, this is just an update that I wanted to share with you guys as well. And then I managed to see my friends, some of my former colleagues, my relatives, my family in St. Petersburg. I also managed to go to a few museums and to see a ballet. I am a big fan of ballet. So I went to the Mariinsky Theater and I saw Giselle, which I didn't expect would be so good, but I really enjoyed it. It was great seeing a ballet in person. The dances were great. The orchestra, the music, the atmosphere, everything, it was amazing. So now every time I go back to Russia, I do want to go and see ballet because this is a really amazing experience. I've never been to the Bolshoi Theater, which is in Moscow, but hopefully someday I'll go and see ballet there in person as well. And then in my home city, as I mentioned, I was sick most of the time, but still I managed to meet some of my friends and my mom, and in general, I spent a good time there as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope that someday I will be able to do these workshops again, and maybe not only in Russia but in other countries. Please let me know if you're interested in these workshops. Maybe someday I'll come to your country and to your city and we can all discuss everything CMT related, exercise, drink some nice tea, and stay positive. Okay, well, thank you for watching this video. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.